So the other day, I was browsing through Twitter when I saw this post from a GTA news account about how GTA 6 makes GTA 5 look like a PlayStation 3 game, where he takes the trailer footage from GTA 6's beach and compares it to the Vespucci beach in GTA 5 to show the difference in visual fidelity. And while the comments underneath are absolutely hilarious, with people pointing out that yes, GTA 5 is indeed a PS3 game, as it originally launched on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 all the way back in September of 2013, this little exchange made me reflect on just how long GTA 5 has been around. I mean, I've been playing this game since launch day, and when they added online, I jumped right in, and now I'm a veteran player with over a decade of experience, and I've even got my very own channel on YouTube with hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and it's all because of you, the viewers. So if you guys don't mind, I'd like to thank you by taking a trip down nostalgia lane and showing just how far we've come since the old days. So here are 25 GTA Online facts that you probably don't know about unless you're an OG. And the first fact is how people used to abuse certain missions like Rooftop Rumble, a titan of a job, and Coveted to make lots of money in a short amount of time. Mind you, these still didn't pay a whole lot. It was only like 11 to 15,000 per mission, but we could do these in a reasonably short amount of time, and once you got the flow down, these were some of the easiest missions to make cash with in GTA Online back when a basic sedan didn't cost you $1.5 million. Rockstar would later increase the difficulty of these missions by altering the enemy spawns and changing the mission objectives, and that did make the missions a bit harder for the average player, but the grinders out there were still undeterred, so Rockstar then went ahead and pulled the ultimate bad sport move on us. They made it so missions like Rooftop Rumble now had a timer-based payout, so the more time you spend, the more money you made, and you were no longer rewarded for being skilled at the game, because now, even though you completed the mission in just 7 minutes, you still had to spend another 5 or 6 minutes by standing in front of that yellow Corona to earn the maximum amount of money. And so you'd see all these people in the lobbies back then just standing there AFK in front of the yellow marker for ages before completing their mission. And here's another fact that you probably didn't know about if you only just joined the game in the last few years. Back in the day, we didn't have a return personal vehicle to garage option in the interaction menu. Instead, you had to get out of your car, do a quarter-mile sprint to the other side of the block, and once you were far enough, only then could you finally request a new personal vehicle. Either that, or you got out, stole an NPC car, and then drove far enough away so the game no longer flagged you for being in close proximity to your current personal vehicle. Also, if you tried playing the 5 OG heist recently, you probably noticed that no one in the lobby will join up unless you're doing the finale. That's because most new players suck at these heists, and all the grinders are too busy with Cayo, Diamond Casino, and the Cluckenbell Farm raid to give a crap about the Fleece job or the prison break. And it's a real shame because they're still entertaining to this day, and back in 2022, they even received a massive payout boost that increased the take by 50% while simultaneously reducing setup fees, but it seems that the requirement for extra players and the complex mission design has rendered these heists obsolete in the modern era because for solo players, there are now much better ways to make more money in less time. Speaking of money, the easiest way to get the whole lobby together back in 2013 and 2014 were these things. Armored trucks loaded with cash that would randomly spawn in the streets of Los Santos, and what you could do is shoot the center of the rear doors to break open the lock and collect a couple $1,000s for yourself. And when I say a couple thousand, I mean it. Quite literally, people were murdering each other over the stuff because cash was so rare back then and every single dollar mattered. You'd see groups of friends in stolen NPC cars just chasing these trucks around and shooting at anybody who got in their way. You'd also see people doing the stunt jump on this conveniently placed hill next to this tunnel underneath Fort Zancudo, where if you got the speed and the approach angle just right, you could leapfrog directly into the highly secure military base. You see, back then, the gates for Fort Zancudo didn't work, so you couldn't just drive in. And there were no hangars in there either, so nobody had a clearance level. Instead, they'd grab a decently fast NPC car off the streets or bring their own supercar, leap into the base, immediately catching a 4-star Wanna level, and then here's what they do. Rush at the laser jet parked in the middle of the base and try to take off with it before getting blown up by the defenses. This was before Rockstar introduced purchasable fighter jets into the game as well, so anyone who managed to get their hands on a laser was essentially king of the lobby. And another thing you probably never experienced if you're a new player is the OG hood cam, which is a setting you can turn on in the menu, but back then it was the default first-person view whenever you were in a vehicle because Rockstar didn't have actual high-res textures for car interiors back then. Remember folks, this is a PlayStation 3 era game. Or at least it was back then, and there's only so much you can do with a console that has a meager 512 megabytes of memory. So the way it worked is you had this GoPro style camera mounted to the hood and it could spin around, and it wasn't really a driver's seat POV, but it gave you a slightly better view of the corners as you were making turns and races, and that allowed you to hit the apex every single time because of that additional information that you got on the side of your screen. Here's another blast from the past: robbing gas station convenience stores. I know some of the brand new players still do this today, but back then it wasn't considered a noob thing. Instead, it was a legit way to make money because friends would pile up in a sedan or an SUV, they'd plot a route through the city that took them to multiple convenience stores, and they'd rob these one by one to make about $20,000 an hour, which isn't that much now, but back then $20,000 felt like 200 grand because we didn't have any real free roam activities or heists yet, and other than Rooftop, Rumble, Violent Duct, or Titan of a Job, your options for money making were pretty limited. And once you got rich, you know what was the best way to show off your money? A chromed out Truffati adder. And there's two reasons for that. First, at $1 million, the adder used to be the most expensive car in the game. Secondly, we didn't have all the paint and livery options that we do in the modern era, so chrome paint was the most expensive paint you could get, and if you saw a chromed out car on the streets, it meant the guy driving it was absolutely loaded. These days though, it just looks tacky and very few people use chrome paint anymore. Another thing that you may not know is that back in the Xbox 360 and PS3 days, when the game was still brand new, we didn't have free roam underwater exploration in GTA 5's online mode. There were certain glitches you could do to get underwater, but due to technical limitations, Rockstar decided to leave this feature out of online mode. Kind of like how we were limited to 16-person lobbies back then. Later updates open up the oceans and the lakes, and we even got personal submarines along with hidden underwater treasures and little Easter eggs that you can only find if you go scuba diving underneath the waters of Los Santos. Back in the early days, if you found yourself running low on ammo in a PvP fight against other players, you had two options here. Either kill your opponent and steal the ammo that they drop, or you bail out and drive to the nearest ammunition to grab some ammo first. These days, you can just open up your interaction menu and buy the ammo on the spot, allowing people to spam RPGs and grenade launchers non-stop, but back then PvP battles were just as much of a test of resource management as they were a test of your actual aiming skills. Rank requirements were a much bigger deal too, because now with the agency, the freak shop, and the gun van, you've got all these ways of getting your hands on extremely powerful weapons like the combat MG, heavy sniper, and minigun as a brand new player. But in the OG days, you had to be a certain rank to buy these guns, and there was just no way around it. You were also limited to really bad armor types early on, whereas nowadays, anybody can get their hands on super heavy armor. And you may not have experienced this, but I remember very well when the nightclub safe only used to hold a maximum of $100,000. It wasn't until the Dr. Dre contract DLC that this was updated to 250 grand, meaning you no longer had to visit your nightclub as frequently to withdraw your passive income. And while you were inside your nightclub back in 2018, you couldn't run or jog. You had to do the extremely annoying slow walk, and this meant each nightclub trip would take you absolute ages, just for you to get into the office or open up the wall safe. And the same was true for the casino. You couldn't run in there either. You had to walk every time you wanted to do your daily wheel spin. Thankfully, Rockstar changed this with a quality of life update a few years down the line, and now we can jog inside of these properties. Another thing that we take for granted, I think, is the ability to save outfits at a safe house and swap them in real time through the interaction menu. This was just not a thing back in the day, because anytime you wanted a new outfit, you had to go to a clothing store or an apartment, but approximately 8 years ago, they made it so you could hold up to 20 saved outfits at a time, and then they also added the ability to swap outfits directly from the interaction menu while in free roam. The Zentorno is considered one of the GOATs when it comes to supercars in GTA 5 due to its excellent customization and handling, but if you weren't around in the old days, you probably aren't familiar with its darker side, because back then, before the Oppressors and Deluxos and the Toreadors, the Zentorno's bulletproof rear end made it the ultimate PvP vehicle. Basically, players would drive around in reverse, close in on an enemy, and toss a sticky bomb right in their face. You couldn't do anything about it either, because you were likely too low of a level to afford the RPG, and grenades also have a delay, so you can't reliably kill someone zooming around at 100 miles an hour in their Zentorno. So depending on which side of this exchange you were on, you either have really fond memories of the Zentorno or really horrible memories of people reversing into you and throwing C4 in your face as you helplessly shot at them, but never managed to land a hit. Another thing only OG players remember is how anybody with an apartment in the Eclipse Towers was considered a rich guy, and how these people would invite all their friends to the apartment for a party. Back then, 400 grand was a lot of money, and if you could afford to spend that kind of cash on a residence, you were definitely part of a rare breed, and folks wanted to visit your apartment and get a bird's eye view of the city underneath. We would smoke bongs, watch TV, listen to the radio, drink wine, and well, that's about the extent of what we could do, because this was before Rockstar introduced the heist update. And if you didn't have the cash for a high-end apartment in the Eclipse Towers, you could eventually get there by stealing NPC cars off the streets and selling them to LS Customs, which is what a lot of people used to do back in 2013 to 2015 when they needed some cash. The more expensive or rarer the car, the more you'd get paid for it. And when you wanted a personal helicopter, you'd do this. You'd call Merryweather, request a helicopter for $1,000, then once the guy arrived, you'd kill him, hop inside, and now you had your very own Maverick helicopter. This was before CEO buzzards and personal helicopters, by the way, so the skies were mostly empty and anybody with a helicopter or a stolen laser jet was literally God and nobody could touch him. There's another really cool trick that people would do, and it was strapping a bunch of sticky bombs to their friends' backs and turning them into a human homing missile. Really slow, but you also don't want to be nearby when that dude blows up, because that's about 4 or 5 sticky bombs going off at the same time. And speaking of trolling, I remember when people would trap each other inside shops by blocking the doors with a car. I also remember when sweatlords used to boost their KD ratios by farming kills in free mode PvP until Rockstar later made it so you could no longer do that, and now your KD ratio is only affected by PvP modes and not free roam kills. We also used to have a limit of 3 residencies or properties per player, but that went up to 10 residences over the years because Rockstar likes it when people spend money, and there's no better way to waste money than buying 10 high-end apartments. Unless you really need that parking space, of course, in which case you should probably buy a few more apartments to store all your fancy cars there. Wheelies and muscle cars are also a new addition, and you might have taken this feature for granted as a new player, but before 2018, muscle cars would launch just like any other car before Rockstar made it so you could hold down the handbrake and mash the throttle to pop a wheelie with it. Then, if you've ever wondered why there are so many dang contacts in your phone, good news, because Rockstar has added a feature that lets you personalize your contact list and trim out all the unnecessary ones, something that you just couldn't do in the OG days. Lastly, for the most important update of them all, we finally got the ability to do resupplies and sell missions for our businesses in invite-only lobbies, and this was introduced with the Criminal Enterprises update in July of 2022. That's all I really have for this video. I'd love to know which of these changes that you've experienced firsthand and which ones you've only learned about by watching this video. Thank you guys so much for clicking on it and watching today. Don't forget to drop a like on it if you found it enjoyable or informative. Consider subscribing to the channel if you are new and you want to see more GTA Online content just like this. Check me out over on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram, specifically twitch.tv/hazardoushtv, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios, amigos.